And Sharon Caddy and I are joined today by Bill Bogart, who's a Toronto-based international expert on reducing the harm of risky behavior, society, and Canadian law. We're talking about risky behavior, and Bill was in here not long ago talking about obesity, but now you were here. You were here prematurely. We got the first dibs on that.
Yeah, well, I don't think I was here prematurely. I was here because you guys have foresight and are at the cutting edge of what I think will be a national debate about protecting people with obesity from discrimination. I spoke on that yesterday at the Canadian Obesity Summit, and it was front page news on the National Post. I'm doing interviews about it, hoping to further the discussion, and that's all well and good, but I want to recognize what she said as having me on 4 months ago to discuss these issues, and I deeply appreciate what she said has done in terms of furthering the discussion. So bravo.
Thank you so much. And we're going to further another discussion on another risky behavior. And now we're talking about smoking and cigarettes. I mean, we didn't really, Bill, they're more dangerous than we have since discovered. I mean, I didn't think it could get any worse. I mean, I see billions of dollars worth of ads, you know, flashing across the screen on how bad it is. And
yeah, you know what? I think even the medical community have been shocked by these studies. We'd long known that smoking was associated with lung cancer and emphysema and cardiovascular diseases.
And gum disease and all kinds of other things.
But now there's evidence about harm done to the kidneys, to the intestines, a whole bunch of other organs. So it's a surprise. It's an unpleasant surprise, but it's also, we hope, a powerful motivator to drive down those rates of smoking even further. And you know, that's the chunk of good news. There are now a set of more recent statistics from the Centers for Disease Control. So this is in the United States, but these stats are roughly parallel for Canada. And the rates of smoking after having plateaued for a while at about 20% globally speaking in Canada and the United States have now begun to go down further. And the really good news is that they're falling amongst kids. So that in terms of youth, those rates in the United States are now down to single digits, sort of 8 or 9%. They're slightly higher in Canada, but they are trending down. And the further bit of news from that chunk is that, of course, as the rates of smoking decline, the rates of secondhand smoking decline.
Which is is great. You know, it's interesting that you say that, because in my generation it was cool. But in my children's generation, I have twin boys, and they were talking about, one of them talking about a girl that the other one, because one lives in the U.S., and said, what about that girl? I was overhearing them. And he said, no, we went to a party, she walked outside, and I saw, and she was smoking, and that was it for him. It was a complete... It was non-negotiable. Suddenly, she was no longer attractive.
In our generation, though, when you think about it, if you watched the news, people were smoking while they were reading the news. You could smoke anywhere. You saw it on television and in movies and in the donut. I remember as a kid going into the donut shop, and you have a donut, and it tasted like chocolate and cigarettes.
Yeah. Well, and you know, that's what prompted me to write this Huffington Post on the end of smoking ? Because when these news stories came out about, on the one hand, the increasing dangers of cigarette smoke, and on the other hand, the falling rates, a lot of anti-tobacco advocates said, well, okay, now we really have to double down on the regulatory interventions, so restriction of advertising, mandatory warnings, prohibition in public places, prohibition of...
So they want more of that?
They want more of that, and I'm not against that by any means, but the point of the Huffington Post was actually to pick up on the exchange between you two right now, meaning what brought down the rates of smoking over the last 40 years from about, globally speaking, 50% to now something around 17% were these regulatory interventions? I'm a lawyer,
right.
So I'm all for that,
right.
It's assuming they're effective. But what was also absolutely critical were the changing attitudes.
Yeah, the
right?
societal.
Exactly. The norms around smoking.
Well, it was in the same way that my parents would go to cocktail parties and drink and drive home. They weren't drunk, but they would have 3 or 4 drinks. They never thought about it.
And everybody did.
And now, our children, I mean, I used to listen to my children, years of talking about who's going to be the DD. It would never occur to them.
Or pre-planning friends that are going to share cab rides
if
you're going to a similar party. And they plan ahead.
It would never occur to them to drink and get in a car. Never. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah. See, this is actually kind of my mantra in terms of risky behavior, in terms of law generally. We need to figure out, leaders need to figure out how to get a kind of codependence going on between regulatory interventions and shifting attitudes.
Well, if you could do something about chocolate, that would really help me out. I would like to feel like a pariah when I eat chocolate or something sweet like a cinnamon bun.
There are some vices that are just not worth giving up.
No. I think
it would really help me out. I wouldn't have to, struggle through a diet and feel that. I would just not do it because it would be unacceptable.
Yeah, no. Good luck with that one.
Okay.
I think alcohol, tobacco, gambling, recreational drugs are way ahead of that one.
Yeah, I think so.
And with tobacco.
What about e-cigarettes though?
Yeah,
that's
huge.
That's people think that's kind of cool.
Where I live, 2 vapor bars have just opened within a block of each other, and I thought, wow, I'm so out of the loop. I had no idea it was that big.
Well, okay, so I start off this Huffington Post by talking about the good news, the falling rates of secondhand smoke, and then I say the bad news is the cigarettes are even more dangerous than we thought, and that vaping rates. Uses e-cigarettes, vaping, is up, and it's particularly up amongst the kids.
Now,
okay,
tell
so
me
now
about the danger, because what I'm hearing from people who do it or who have is that, there are none of the toxins, none of the poisons in there. It's much safer because it's only tobacco. It's not all the other stuff.
Tar and stuff.
Tar.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is it healthier?
Okay, may I say?
Yeah.
Stay tuned. My next Huff Post is on vaping.
Oh, no. We want the preview. No.
No, but I want to come back.
Well, you can come back, but we don't want to be second to Huff
the
Post,
teaser.
do we?
Okay, you know what? In all seriousness, I think we're caught in a kind of rock and a hard place, and I'm not the only one that's saying that, meaning health advocates don't like e-cigarettes for the various reasons you've outlined. Like the science around them is kind of unclear right now.
So they don't like it because it's cool and because it's attractive and it's socially acceptable?
Well, they don't like it, I think, for 2 primary reasons. One, the science around it is not settled. They're not as dangerous as conventional cigarettes, but they're not safe. So we don't know just how dangerous they are. Okay, so that's point number 1. And the second thing is we don't know whether they help people come off of smoking conventional cigarettes or they're a gateway to conventional cigarettes.
Well, that's what I've wondered when I walk past these vapor bars, because I figure, a young person's going in who's trying to get off of cigarettes, but they bring along their friend. Well, it's not really smoking.
Well, then that's part of it. And you see, the real rock in the hard place for kids, there's a couple of rocks in a hard place. One, rates of conventional smoking are going down. Rates of vaping are going up. So you might draw the conclusion, look, in this instance, vaping is keeping kids away from conventional cigarettes.
True.
So that while we don't like vaping, it may be the lesser of 2 evils.
Let me ask you this.
Now,
what are the regulations for vaping? Because you can't buy cigarettes unless you're 19 and all that business. But vaping, do they have the same... Can you go to a vaping bar and...
Okay, you were like this in the last interview. Like you're always way ahead of me. No, really.
That's my job. That's my job, because I want to keep you writing and I want to keep you researching.
Well, God love you. God love you. That's, I think, is exactly that's kind of exactly the point. Like, we don't know what to do with this situation amongst kids because all the activity is illegal, right? When kids smoke, by definition, they're engaged in illegal activity because it's illegal to sell them cigarettes. Now, we also know, sadly, that about 40% of the cigarettes in this province are contraband.
Right.
So if you're selling illegal cigarettes, you're hardly inhibited about selling them to kids because it's just another act of illegality.
So same
with vaping.
Okay.
Say kids, they're not to be sold to kids under 18.
Okay.
And certainly that everyone agrees that to any extent that the law is unclear, that should be clarified. But the point is, once you've made them illegal, and if the kids are still vaping, then you're going back to social norms. Like, we got to try to figure out a way for the kids that are still doing it. And most kids don't do any of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, which is very important and very good to remember. We got to deliver a message that it's dumb to engage in this stuff. Right?
So we need to add it on to the anti-smoking.
It's right. It's not cool.
Ads.
It's not cool to smoke.
It's
not an act of defiance against parents. If you're smoking, all you are the pawns of the cigarette companies. Do you like being a pawn? Right? Like
that's a message that needs to be shared more.
Absolutely.
And shared in a way that those remaining kids get it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't worry about being defined to your parents and to your schools. That may be an issue. Recognize that when you smoke and you vape, you're the pawns of people who are peddling poison.
There you go.
Peddling poison. I love that phrase. Good. Let's hope there's an ad writer out there that will pick that up.
Yeah.
Bill Bogart, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, and we look forward to having you back again. This is fun.
Thank you.
Ahead of the curve.
Thank you very much for having me on. That's great.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.